It is hard to imagine a landscape more serene, more manicured, more perfectly British than the water and the fells of the Lake District in Cumbria that marks the northwest of England. Peaceful villages fringe the corners of the English lakes like carefully positioned models on an idealized landscape. And through the winding roads comes a stranger to these parts, a technical van from German television, making its way to a rendezvous. The fells rise up to a maximum height of over 1,000 meters, and this word reminds you of the continental connections that Britain has had in the past. The word comes from the German fels, rock. Who could imagine the hard work that gave rise to this network of roads and to the dry stone walls, held together by nothing but gravity, which mark out the sheep fields on the sides of the hills? Getting through the mountains is not easy, and where a pass does occur, it is common to find a pub, marking the safe haven for travellers at the crest of the rise. On this occasion, it's the private helicopter which is the most sensible means to travel. Today I am heading to Hartsop Hall, a long-established farmhouse near the Lake of Ullswater, where the English poet Wordsworth wrote about those famous daffodils. In his time, the lakes were a distant part of the realm which took time to reach, but now holidaymakers are more common in the Lake District than even daffodils are. Our arrangements have worked well. The TV crew arrive on perfect schedule. In coming to this old homestead, we are going to step back in time to a lifestyle that is changing fast, and which could, some people claim, disappear altogether.
Sheila.
Hello, Brian. How pleased to see you.
Pleased to see you too. Are you well?
Very well, thank you.
And welcome to Hartsop Hall in Patterdale, near Ullswater, in the English Lake District. A traditional sheep farm. The farmhouse is run by Sheena Allen. How long has the house been here, Sheena?
Well, this is the new part. It was built in the 18th century.
And that's new.
That's new, yes. This is the old part. It was built in the 16th century.
Has it always been a sheep farm?
Well, the farming side, I think you'd better talk to John about it. And he's in the living room. Would you like to go and see him?
Through here?
That's right.
I'll go and find him. Hello again, John.
Hello, Brian.
Sheena said I'd find you.
That's right.
Keeping well?
Yes, fine, thank you.
And
Have you
busy?
had a good journey.
Oh, it wasn't bad.
No.
It's always nice to come through the scenery because you have the mountains, the lakes, the streams.
Yeah.
Tell me, how long have you been living in this house?
All my life.
You were born here.
I was born in this house, yes.
Did you start off as a farmer?
Well, my father was a farmer, and I followed into the business as soon as I was old enough. And worked for my father for some years, and then he took me into partnership.
So you've been farming here on your own since when?
1960.
At the moment we're in the spring. What are you doing at the present time?
Well, we're just getting through probably the busiest period in sheep farming, that's lambing time. And now we're concentrating on getting the lambs marked with their identification marks, because of course they get mixed with other farmers' sheep when they go out onto the hill. So they're all to mark, and this is what we're concentrating on now, getting them marked and getting them back to their own home ground upon the hills.
So when you have the dog out in the field and the sheep are in the distance, what whistling command do you send to the dog to send it away?
Well, I have one to go to the right, one to go to the left,
Yeah.
one to stop, and one to walk towards its sheep. And then the final one, which we all wait for, come on, we're going home, we're finished.
So let's assume that you've just sent the dog away. It's running to the distance and it's beginning to veer to the left. What would you do at once?
If I didn't want it to veer to the left, I would stop it and give it a command to back out to the right, which would be...
And then you'd move it into the sheep by saying what?
Either way, and I want it to come in, because it's too far out.
So although you only have 5 basic commands, by using 2 of them, you could make the dog go anyway.
That's right. You can send it to any point on the compass and make it take its sheep to any point on the compass by stopping it and making it walk towards its sheep, whether they are north, south, east or west, and it will take them in that direction.
Now when the dog has been around the sheep and they're gathered together, how do you know which mark to give your sheep so that you can tell they're yours?
Well, each farm has its own mark and they are recorded in the Shepherd's Guide. These are reproduced fairly regularly, and in it are recorded all the flock marks for the area. And it belongs to the farm and not to the farmer, so that if a farm changes hands, the marks remain the same.
What can the marks be made up of, John?
Well, there are two types of marks. The wool marks, which are a red paint or a black paint or a blue paint or nowadays green paint, somewhere on the wool, somewhere on the animal's body. It may be just a mark, a blot, or it may be a stroke, or it may even be a letter. And these are for ease of identification. Quite obviously you can see them, and you can see them at a distance.
But of course you can always cut the wool off.
That's right. And so it's necessary to have something more permanent. And so we use the ears and put snips in the ears or cuts in the ears, and various ear marks are used, and these stay in for the lifetime of the sheep.
How do you mark your sheep?
We have a hole through the left ear and a little piece cut off the end of both ears, which in sheep terms is a punch hole near ear, and cropped both ears.
And that's a code everybody will know.
That's right. If you talk to a sheep farmer anywhere, he will know what you mean by punch hole near ear and cropped both.
The big problem that you're faced with, though, is the number of lambs that are taken by foxes. So how is that controlled?
Well, we have packs of foxhounds in all the sheep areas of the British Isles, and particularly on the high fell areas. It's very necessary to control the number of foxes because there's no natural predator for them, and so man has to act as the controlling influence.
How is the hunting done? With horses?
No, not at all. Not possible on these stiff mountains. It is done on foot. A lot of people enjoy it, a lot of people go out hunting for the sport, but to us sheep farmers it is an absolute necessity to control the numbers. Now people today argue that it is not a humane way of controlling foxes, but I believe it is the most humane way, because the fox itself is an animal that is gangrenous. If it has a sore, it festers. And so it is necessary to adopt a method that either kills it or it escapes unhurt. And this is so with hunting. It is not so with shooting or trapping or gassing. He either dies today or is perfectly fit and well tomorrow.
On the map, I noticed that there was a road. Lake District looks so utterly pastoral, so completely in tune with its agricultural past, it has had an important industrial history too. There was even mining up here for centuries, and ancient metal mines were an important source of commerce. Some of these have closed down only recently, and were active employers easily within living memory. This is the Greenside lead mine, perched on the hill above Ullswater. Or rather, it was the lead mine, because Greenside is now just a youth hostel. Walter Burnett and Eddie Poole both worked in the mine. Eddie, how did your name come to be associated with this area? Is Poole a local name?
Well, originally there were Germans, I would reckon. Quite a lot of families came here to mine in first Queen Elizabeth time, and well, hence they carried on mining in this particular part.
That's because in Germany they knew more about mines at that time.
Yeah, I would think that would be the reason, yeah.
How big was the mine when it was going at its maximum?
Oh, there'd be up to 200 people employed, mainly on all underground, you know, and running on, of course, 3 shifts, 7 days a week.
So it was working continuously?
Yes. During the wartime, of course, it was.
How long ago then did the mine cease working?
1960, or thereabouts.
Yeah.
And what has happened to the mine itself, Eddie, since it was closed, since mining ceased?
Well, the planning board as such just basically took it to bits.
Because behind us, all the old buildings and the old workings have just been destroyed.
That's right. Well, they seem to think they would like to put it back to nature, and indeed this is as it's left.
But don't you think that with the increased interest in tourism and our heritage, it would have been a good thing if they kept the mine buildings as a tourist attraction?
Yeah. Well, most of us were very, very disappointed at this sort of thing happening, you know.
The blend of such traditional patterns of life with modern transport has not always been an easy one. Some of these studies of the Lake District in recent years have shown that the hooves of the mountain ponies, like the boots of the fell walkers from the towns, can damage the landscape, causing actual harm to this precious corner of the British countryside. The existence of a national park helps to ensure that the Lake District can never be overdeveloped, and planning controls are strict. On the other hand, such a landscape would be without any value unless people could enjoy it personally. But developments are no longer allowed if they don't harmonise with the landscape. Even the traditional coloured British telephone box is a dull grey up here to fit in with the stony hillsides. Even the water sports have now been carefully controlled. The buzzing of the water skiers' launch that used to split the peaceful air of Ullswater has now been banned, so the lake retains its atmosphere of peace, broken only by the carefully restored steamer which chugs with its ferry traffic from one village to the next. The lakes still capture the creative urge of the part-time amateur painter, as they once attracted the full-time poet. It was at Ullswater that William Wordsworth wrote his famous words. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. This is in fact the very glade where Wordsworth was inspired to write those words. Now the blue hyacinth is more abundant than the tiny yellow daffodils that attracted him, for many of those blooms are picked by day trippers, whose thoughts are more for gathering a fast-dying trophy than for the ability to share a romantic vision of nature in the wild. This is the local main road which leads to Windermere, largest of all the lakeside towns. It is a centre for holidaymakers and a leading commercial and shopping centre too. There's a railway terminal at Windermere, for example, and a boat service that departs with clockwork regularity to connect with the main lakeside settlements. You can buy a ticket through your local European rail station right through via Windermere to one of those villages, and the boat trip is all part of the timetable. The water, the hills, the landscape, all combine to tell a story of mankind living in an environment, and what is more, living in harmony with other living things. So there were two factors, two important economic factors in the development of the Lake District. Sheep farming to produce meat, and the lead mines as industry. Now there are still two factors. Sheep farming, though at the moment to manage the landscape, and a new industry. The industry, of course, is tourism. But the development of tourism depends upon the landscape remaining unspoiled. And this landscape is being kept unspoiled, much like the landscapes of the Black Forest or the American national parks. But although those are natural landscapes, this one has been made by man. It is a garden landscape, the fusion of mankind with nature. And what a majestic garden landscape this is. Trees in their prime, planted back in the 19th century but with today's mature appearance in mind, rise serenely above the colourful flowers and ferns of these well-maintained botanical collections. Amongst this cultivated wilderness of nature live a people whose life is softened by the closeness of nature, yet their hearts are toughened by the confrontation with traditional realities. A landscape of a soft green, merging as the days die and as autumn replaces summer into a soft ochre brown.